And we are live. Hello, everybody, and welcome back. The ZK role continues. I'm joined today by Hubert. He's the CEO of vlayer Labs, and we're going to talk about data infrastructure, web proofs, and how we can all build better applications with zero-knowledge technology. Hubert, how are you doing today, my friend?
It's all good. Thanks, Anthony. It's great to be on the show and happy to dive deeper into some of the content.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for joining us. Coming to us live from LaGuardia Airport. So apologies maybe for some background noise, but a beautiful, beautiful backdrop, and really glad that you're here to join us today. Again, I've been going down something of a crusade around the importance of data protection, privacy, and building better apps, or even rewiring the internet using technology now from cryptography, from zero knowledge, from Web3, from blockchain that can allow us to right some of the wrongs or maybe upgrade some of the architecture choices that we made in the mid 90s, right? Or at least in the early 2000s that have led us to this path. And I'm really excited to get your take on it. You've been working with data and data infrastructure for a long time. So certainly a helpful and inspired thought partner for this conversation. But for people who don't know you, Hubert, give us your brief introduction, give us your intro, and how did you find yourself in blockchain and Web3?
Sure, happy to share a bit of the backstory here. So I would describe myself as a data person. By background, I'm a quantitative economist, which effectively should mean that I believe in two things. I believe in data and I believe in utility functions. So ideally, I should be working on something that combines the two. But maybe putting this into more precise frame. I have spent a bit over 7 years of my former career building an online fraud prevention engine called Method. So effectively, it was a data company. We've been designing and developing proprietary data collectors that allowed us, on behalf of our enterprise customers, to better understand every single user session. So effectively, whenever someone was entering the website or logging into a native mobile application, we were able to collect evidence in the form of data that was used by us and our machine learning based engine to determine what's the likelihood that an actor that the server of the platform is dealing with could have malicious intentions. So online fraud has been on the rise ever since internet has won the hearts of the masses, and quite clearly there are several vectors of attacks, as we call them in cybersecurity space. And our solution for this problem was to equip online platforms on an e-commerce side or financial institution side with better insight stemming from the information value that is sitting within data. It has been a very exciting journey. We've been growing the business and finding our product market fit across various segments. But essentially, that just further strengthened my passion for, or my deeply rooted understanding that there is a power in harnessing volumes of data and trying to figure out how to process them, how to extract this information value from the volumes that are available. And it hopefully doesn't come as a surprise that after exiting the business, we sold to one of the leading private payment service providers specialized on marketplaces called MangoPay in late 2022. But as soon as I was available to go back to the drawing board and actually think what I would like to do with my time on this planet, it was quite natural for me to search for another data company idea. And I couldn't be more fortunate to be in a situation that coincided with the fact that my today's co-founder Marek, he was also available because he sold his former business to another entity, and he has been going through the rabbit hole, as sometimes we call it, of zero knowledge proofs. But essentially, for him, he has been passionate about developing the best possible developer tooling software out there. He has created Waffle, used up as two examples of two frameworks that have been widely adopted by developer masses, but in the context of blockchain technology. And maybe a word of a backstory of how we interacted, because I guess a lot of people are actually wondering what's the best recipe for finding the right co-founder. For us, it was quite coincidental, I have to say, because it was in 2016. I've been working at a venture builder. I joined as a project manager, product manager / interim CEO for a smaller unit. It's a venture builder company based out of Warsaw that has been exploring with various frontier technologies. And back in 2016, blockchain has been emerging as one of the places to play with and try to figure out something useful. So my mission was to create some very early but useful applications for then blockchain technology. And to be very transparent, I had been a little bit discouraged by the state of the landscape. But I was fortunate enough to encounter Marek, who sold his then former business to this venture group, and he has been acting as a venture as a VC of as a VP of engineering, and since I needed some deep level expertise and support with some of the project ideas that we were working on, we started working together, and that's where it clicked. And given completely different backgrounds, he's a computer scientist, very technical at heart, but at the same time with a lot of passion and willingness to understand how business is working. And he's been very successful as an entrepreneur himself. We developed this relationship, but it hasn't been for another almost 7 years that we were able to operationally build something together. So since the relationship was established, we have been discussing every quarter or so and sharing some thoughts. I've been fighting with fraud. He has been building his blockchain business, working on the tooling projects at the side. And this relationship has been growing at a very natural pace. And I believe that's something that is not shared very often whenever the topic of co-foundership is being raised. But actually, this is a very intimate relationship. This is a very intimate relationship that requires a lot of trust. Most of the successful co-founder setups are actually the ones that are not coming out of nowhere, and there is simply need for time and understanding and this multi-dimensional network of thoughts and trust being established, so that you are able to go for something very, very difficult, so like starting something up and making it work. So I was very fortunate that we had this relationship. Marek was after his exit. I was just stepping out from my operational role at Methon/MangoPay, and we have started to spend long hours discussing what I have been seeing, what he has been seeing, and trying to figure out what the marriage of some of these ideas was or would be. And surprise, surprise, vlayer is the baby coming from this stage of our life. Obviously, as any company at this stage, we've been gradually refining the clarity and focus what exactly the business is going to be about. And probably this is never a finished journey. Like as the business matures, it becomes even more refined. But it was 2nd of January 2024 when we met for dinner in a very casual place in the center of Warsaw, where we effectively pulled the trigger on a building vlayer. So this is definitely a date that we keep in our calendars, and then ever since it has been a pretty crazy ride.
And 10 months later, here you are on the show, and I mean that's incredible pace. And also, thank you for taking us into the backstory. We don't often get to hear the the founders' stories or the founders' journeys. You kind of assume that people come as ready-made, ready-packaged CEOs. You don't often get to hear about, the previous projects, the successes, failures, the courtship that goes on, the legal bureaucracy and admin that goes on. But it's helpful to know that it's been quite a quick story and quite a good story for you, and you actually found somebody that you were very excited to work with, and you have that nice mix of kind of payments experience, data experience, Web3 experience, because moving from managing data fraud on Web2 or on the traditional web versus doing it in Web3, slightly different kettle of fish, slightly different environment, slightly different challenge. And I share some of your concern around the challenge of scaling blockchain technology. And a lot of it is with making it easier for developers, making it easier to build applications, and championing the applications themselves as much as the infrastructure. But we'll get onto that shortly. Before I go further, I will remind you guys, this is a LinkedIn Live. So please, if you have any questions for Hubert, if you have any questions for me, anything you want to cover as part of the show, please do put your questions in the comments box. We'll try and pick up as many of them as we can as we go along. So please do grab your comments, grab your questions, and we'll try and get back to them. Also, please let us know where you are. We always appreciate the GMs. Let us know where in the world you're coming in from, where in the world you're listening to us from at this point in time, or what projects you're supporting, whether you're interested or building already in ZK. Let's try and increase the community and the connections between people listening in. So people interested in vlayer, people interested in ZK, people interested in web proofs can meet others in the comment section who are building also. Again, it's about the ecosystem, it's about the community. And on with the show. So this was a question that we wanted to start with. Core to the vlayer labs, core to the vlayer proposition is the idea of web proofs. What I wanted to start with, and we talked before the show, is something that people can relate to, people can understand the concept of what it is we're trying to build and why. WTF is a web proof, Hubert?
That's a great tagline, and we couldn't be more excited that web proofs actually grasped quite a bit of the Twitter, especially, space in the last 6 weeks or so. Even if the underlying technology has been around for a while, but that's very often the case. And maybe just a few words of introduction before we dive into some of the outcomes that we will hopefully, as a society, as a civilization, derive from web proofs as a product. Almost the entire activity online is relying on advanced cryptography. Many of us use several browsers every day, and we've grown used to something called this, something that was described as this green lock next to the website address. They somehow disappeared a few months ago, I believe, but nevertheless, this green lock has been conveying a very important message for the user of a browser, that the connection between the browser and the server, so the server of the platform, of the website and web application that was actually sending the contents to the browser window, could be trusted. And the underlying technology there, so this HTTPS, some people consider it this way. Before we had HTTP, and then S as a secure has been added to this. It's one of the protocols that has been developed as a part of the internet stack. It's called TLS, Transport Layer Security, and it obviously had various iterations, and it's super essential to everything that we as individuals, but also we as companies are doing. Effectively, often I'm receiving this question that, what's the number one invention or piece of software that we are, as a civilization, most reliant on? And definitely within top 3, I would name TLS, because if someone would mention or had a proof that TLS connectivity, TLS as a protocol, has been compromised, effectively anything that we do, client to server, server to server, could be at risk. And these are some of the scenarios we wouldn't like to be discussing. So going back to web proofs, web proof is an idea. It has been an intellectual proof of concept, and then it was implemented as a part of the important group of researchers associated with Ethereum Foundation, like it's called TLS Notary. Kudos to the team that has been pushing this piece of technology forward. Effectively, is an idea to leverage the security properties of the connection between the client and the server, and introduce a third-party agent to this communication in a trusted way. And obviously, there are a lot of security and trust assumptions to the way that TLS Notary or ZK TLS, as sometimes it's being described, is implemented. But like, hopefully, we can keep these details, implementation details aside. At the end of the day, the concept relies on the fact that an external party would be able to notarize that the contents that are being the payload, the transcript, the so-called transcript of the communication between the client and the server, have not been tampered with, but they are to be trusted. And then, of course, this changes everything, because in a world where you're able to authenticate a piece of information that is being displayed within your browser or is coming through a server-to-server connection, like let's say API kind of communication, and you're able to use this fact as a source of input to another computer program, then you would be able to achieve a situation in which this program would be able to fully trust what the inputs are. And very often in the space, we are saying that the more we are reliant on automated systems making decisions for us, the underlying weak point could be the lack of verifiability of the input data. Because what if a very complicated workflow leveraging various data sources and producing a very elaborate and precise decision is being manipulated by the fact that whatever is being injected as an input shouldn't be trusted. So that's why we are talking about verifiability and the need for verifiability. And WebProof effectively is an answer. It's a very nicely compartmentalized product or solution to be able to inject as an input in a trusted way to any computer program, especially the ones that are running on blockchain, which are obviously distributed, and that's where it's so critical. A trusted piece of information coming from any TLS and ensured connection. So maybe just a few examples to demonstrate this. Let's say you would like to log into your bank account, and you would like to convince someone in a trustless way that you own a particular amount of assets. Let's say your bank balance is set at $1 million. That's obviously a very nice situation for anyone to be. So the question
or at
is,
least you have enough in your bank balance to be able to pay for the flight you're about to pay for, or a particular item, or that you want to book into a hotel, right? You don't have to be a millionaire to access TLS Notary, but again, plenty of examples of why you might need to have enough funds without telling people how much funds you actually have.
Exactly. So the question is, how can you convince this external entity that doesn't necessarily trust you because you are just new to the interaction with them, and doesn't have a physical way of really being sure that what you're claiming to own is actually the reality. So a web proof in this situation would allow me, as someone who wants to convince someone, to directly from my browser session, while I'm being logged into my bank account, to produce a very granular piece of evidence that I actually own a particular amount. And since the notarization would come as a proxy to the direct communication between the server and my client, which is the browser, the third party assuming that they trust in the mathematics underlying the cryptography that enables all of that, would have a very strong claim, like trust item to actually believe that what I'm communicating with them is actually state of the art. Obviously, the question is like, what could go wrong in this case? Of course, the servers of the bank could have been compromised, but this is obviously a situation that doesn't come so often, and we it's not a perfect situation because the notarization will be only as precise or only as real as we can rely on the underlying payload being exchanged. But of course, if we are talking about large institutions that are going through a lot of security measures on their side, this is one way to mitigate this risk. The second way of mitigating this risk is obviously asking for several proofs. Like most of us use multiple bank accounts, and then the question is, what is the probability that all of them or a subset of them would be compromised at a single point of time? And obviously,
depends how many of them are being supported by CrowdStrike, I guess. But broadly speaking, there's a pretty low risk that they all go down at once.
But that's just a granular instance of a web proof, and then thinking about what kind of decision logic you as a program want to compose from, you could think about various web proofs that you would like to leverage. But I hope that the message is conveyed. It's effectively, web proof provides a solution for creating a trustless answer to a trust problem whenever a HTTPS data exchange is happening. So effectively, you can notarize almost any data packet that is being transmitted via TLS ensured connection, which obviously is almost everything that we do or own. We all spend most of our days in various Web2 apps for personal or business reasons, and being able to intercept and create a cryptographic proof at that stage, and being able to leverage it in a third-party application, ideally in a decentralized application. We'll be speaking about blockchain in a second. That's the groundbreaking revolution.
Very good, got it. So you're injecting trusted data from the existing web into the decentralized web, and enabling non-on-chain applications to interact with on-chain applications and vice versa, which, as anybody will say, the decentralization is a spectrum, security is a spectrum, right? We can go from, in the Web3 world, everything from Ethereum, publicly available, visible, everything on-chain all the time, to kind of more data protection and privacy specific chains where everything is obfuscated all of the time, which, there's challenges at that end of the spectrum with compliance or being able to demonstrate that transaction data or financial data there, if it's a regulated or a industry that requires compliance, having everything be shielded all the time is actually not legal. And so that could get you into some trouble. But anywhere on that spectrum of fully private to fully public, there's a middle ground which says, I will accept the risk of being nearer one way or the other. Same with applications, right? We have internet applications today that are fully Web2 based, zero blockchain activity, no tokenization, no Web3 wallets, no self-custodying of data whatsoever. And you have probably a number of applications that are probably closer to fully decentralized. It's still hard. Having a fully decentralized website is actually quite hard and quite expensive to do from an engineering perspective. There's usually some components of Web2 or cloud in there still, but you see a lot of the transactions, the identity, the verification happen on chain, which again is the direction of travel for a number of the transformations that we're trying to see happen. Let's talk about what you're doing with WebProof. So vlayer, obviously that's your new initiative. That's what you've chosen to do next, your next data infrastructure business. Maybe before we go there, actually, what prompted you to start another data infrastructure business? Because you had one before, you were kind of heavily into Web2 based data. Why go there again? What was it that dragged you back in?
There is something compelling about data. It has been becoming this currency of unique insight, of fuel for effectively any economic exchange that is happening. And since obviously everything has been digital for a while, or is becoming more and more digital, it only feels that, felt to me, obviously, I'm very biased, that there are so many data sources out there, and the way we treat this data, the way we utilize this data has been changing. And obviously AI and what has been happening for the last 18 months or so, it's really impressive how quickly we are able to deploy these large language models and various variations of also other techniques within the AI landscape for the better productivity of societies, and solve hopefully predominantly good problems, and really do it in the right ethical way. But effectively, it seems that it's what is happening, for instance, with AI, and how it's changing a little bit of the understanding of where the value is created and how it is being monetized. So for me, a very strong observation was it's becoming more and more clear to end consumers that their everyday activity, how they spend their time on various Web2 platforms such as Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, you name them, is becoming a currency, or is becoming a very valuable asset for these large centralized players that are able to put resources to train these massively powerful models. And I do sense that there is an implicit exchange happening in the economy, that more and more individuals are exchanging, or they are willing to spend their time, because obviously it's very compelling, it's very addictive in a way, it's dopamine generating. There's a lot of discussion around this, but they are effectively exchanging their time for producing these data that are then being used and monetized by these large centralized institutions. And then the question is obviously, what is the end result of these models as they are taking bigger and bigger part of how the world works? And for me, the question is always like, how much can you trust the underlying inputs? Like if the large model is being fed some garbage, to use the garbage in, garbage out analogy, it's very easy to imagine that the consequences, given the scale of implementation, could be really massive. So we've been doing our research and trying to figure out like how could we solve for two things. First of all, inject more security into this framework that is starting to govern our world even stronger than ever before. So how can we make sure that at least the inputs are not being faked out of the proportion? How can we make sure that the input data can be trusted, so this verifiability of inputs? Second of all, how can we level somehow the playing field between end consumers that are effectively, by spending their time, they are generating something that is so lucrative for all the large centralized platforms? As we expect that there will be some sort of opposition or counter movement to this reality. And obviously many claim that it will be not all about large language models, maybe there will be medium or small models that are as performant as the ones that we see today. But to be very honest, I'm much more on the side that there will be a stronger reaction from the end consumer protective laws, and effectively making sure that this work that is being put into this is properly remunerated. So what we found extreme.
Yeah. What I would also say is that the number of autonomous agents in the system will only increase over time. We're just starting to see autonomous vehicles making choices, starting to see devices, home devices, mobile devices starting to transact on behalf of users, whether that's to pay for things or to receive funding for things. Again, that's all sensitive data, transactional data that's being sent to places to do things. If you believe that the intermediation of activity on behalf of humans is going to go up, the requirement for trust in that scenario is also increasingly important. The ability to have trust and accuracy in the AIs or the agents that are working on behalf of us also important. it would be amazing to see a fully self-custodied, fully empowered autonomous agent acting on behalf of humans. But to get to that place, we probably need something like a blockchain underneath it. And I sure as hell don't want every single one of my human transactions around how my life is playing out put out there on the Ethereum blockchain. Not now, not ever.
Very true. And not to mention that, like, purely economically, posting all of this data in an unprocessed way directly on the blockchain would be extremely expensive. So probably wouldn't make sense outside of the privacy consideration.
Indeed, absolutely. And so let's jump into vlayer. We're already halfway through, and we wanted to get to the main part of the show. Talk to us about how does vlayer bring new capability to the scene that we didn't have before, and specifically, how are you guys making use of web proofs that now is kind of composable or buildable for those people out there building on Web 2 and Web 3?
Sure. So let's accelerate the creation of decentralized internet. vlayer, it stands for verifiable layer. As we've been talking about the need for verifiability, hopefully this message is clear. We are effectively, and also not surprising, hopefully because of the background story, it's a data infrastructure company with a very strong developer tooling angle, as both me and my co-founder Marek have been always thinking about. So the biggest problem we've identified that is blocking this grand promise of what blockchains will do for the civilizations, according to our modest opinions, is that today smart contracts are not that powerful. They are solving some problems. It would be very untrue to say that they are useless, but the underlying utility is really limited, and it's limited for structural reasons. If you look at the details, and we don't have time, but like if you look at the developer console of anyone who is trying to build a smart contract for Ethereum network, which is probably the best place to build, and will be the best place to build out there, you are not able to reference much data. Even accessing unlimited history of data coming from the blockchain itself, because of how the Merkle trees and effectively the database structure of blockchain has been designed, which has amazing properties, very unique to itself, makes it very difficult. So our mission and the infrastructure and tooling is effectively answering the problem that developers that want to build a decentralized application are not able to access enough data to make their decision logic powerful and useful enough for end users. That's the separation bubble, as often we call it, of why Web3 is perceived as a bubble. It's like just for particular users that are already there, because we are not able to implement an effective data bridge between Web 2 contexts. So like all the data stored today on centralized servers within the Web 2 apps is not finding its way to the smart contract decision logic. So quite clearly, if you are an end user and you're using your mobility Web 2 app, you are not inclined to move to a Web3 proposal, because obviously there is a strong moat around this Web 2 app. Like you've already had your history and preferences and payment methods and a lot of other things. Why would you decide to choose and just for the sake of decentralization? But if you were able to share the context, and web proofs is one of the great examples with the decentralized app, then the discussion starts to be completely different. So in essence, we are an data infrastructure and developer tooling platform that give any Solidity smart contract developer, so the Ethereum smart contract developer, access to verifiable data from various sources. And for us today, these are three data sources. First one is web proofs, as we discussed. So anything that is being displayed within the browser or goes through APIs under the TLS can be accessed and leveraged on chain in the form of this cryptographic claim. Second, we all rely on emails tremendously. every day, effectively, we are using this as a storage of trust. Like financial companies, employers, governments, they are all communicating to us via email. There are very interesting properties of security properties of email protocol, thanks to the signatures that are being embedded. We have developed a solution, we call it email proofs, just as web proofs, that are able to granularly extract piece of information from any email, and thanks to the fact that emails are signed by mailing servers, to be able to convert it into this cryptographic claim that can be understood by smart contract.
Okay, so you're going beyond just web proofs to also email proofs as well.
Yeah, web proofs, email proofs, these are two external to blockchain sources of data, and the last one is called storage proofs, safe proofs sometimes. These are effectively data coming from the blockchain, but made available extremely easily to developer. And we have been able to do two things, and the features are called teleport and time travel, to make it very easy for imagination to grasp what they do. Teleport allows you to run and jump in between various chains that are EVM and Ethereum compatible. And time travel allows you to go to any block in the history that you want and effectively build your decision logic as freely and as conveniently as any Web2 data query would look like. So effectively, our mission at vlayer is to give these free data sources, implement them in the best possible developer experience. That's my co-founder's favorite thing, to make sure that developers would love it and will really stick with this kind of unified experience. And obviously, there's a lot of heavy technology underneath to make it happen, so that this privacy that you were referring to, like you don't want your financials to be broadcasted to the public blockchain. So we are using zero knowledge proofs, so that we are effectively dealing with claims that are to be trusted, but they are not explicitly sharing the data out. And this is a very important thing that I wanted to really convey, that web proofs, just as the other proofs, are allowing the data to stay with you. Because the starting point is that, like, let's say I'm using Twitter, I have just created a nice post, and let's say it's a very popular post, by the way. It's not an example from today, but feel free to follow me on Twitter. And the moment I hit send or post, this data starts to be the asset, the property of X.com platform. So I cannot own it. Like I cannot use it. Like I always have my account, but everything that is being governed by a centralized party. With web proofs, you're able to regain access to this data and be able to use it however you wish, but the data stays with you. Like you're not sending the data, you're just sharing the claim. The blockchain is referencing things based on these cryptographic claims.
So at a point in time, the way that the proof is constructed will say, today at 12 o'clock, Hubert posted, hey guys, we're launching vlayer. Today is day one. Just letting you know we're here. Or, when the account was created, or, maybe you challenge somebody to say, I reckon that something is going to happen in the next 5 days. You can quote me on this if it happened or not, right? And you will be able to create a proof around that data, and that will be able to be then used as an on-chain oracle for using Web3 terminology. You can say, this is a proof that I put out that tweet. Here's maybe the data that's embedded in it, or you could just say it's a proof that the conditions of this tweet were met. And however the application logic chooses to consume that, up to you. But again, you can create a verifiable proof based on Twitter.
Sure. Well, just obviously the only security assumption is there, but Twitter or X.com servers have not been compromised at the moment of the attestation that was being generated. And you are perfectly fine, you are perfectly correct. There are a lot of attributes, and obviously the decision logic can be created as you wish. One of the examples that we usually do is, like, if you want to think about a decentralized mobility platform, there is this problem of creating this first pool of drivers and then passengers, and obviously you could use the existing profiles of some of the Web2 applications to vampire attack is obviously a very strong term, but like effectively extract or incentivize the users that have profiles there to generate claims and effectively migrate to this new platform. And the best thing ever is that the Web2 platform cannot do anything about this, because it's just as if they, like, in order to do something, they would need to forbid their normal users to access their accounts, which is obviously against the very essence of their service.
So for example, I am a KYC driver on Uber. Please inquire us from the Uber servers whether I am a registered and KYC driver. And if I am, then, so not in that moment, you're not just proving the account, you're also proving what is essentially a third-party attestation of KYC, which, take that across borders. I mean, that's to some extent what PSD2 was trying to do 15 years ago with payments and banking, is saying, look, as long as there's a registered account here, pass that data to any other fintech or financial services application. You can then do inferences on the back of those particular customers, because this is trusted data. And that customer should be able to use that data or their financial information to receive better services. That was kind of the less vampire-y, less contentious, potentially, kind of approach. It was for the betterment of the system and to prevent lock-in. In this model, super powerful.
I hope so.
So
very true. But obviously, like, I wouldn't like this to just not be voiced out. Obviously, regulatory processes are usually a little bit slower than some of the technologies that are entering the scene. So we wouldn't like to go that far saying that just using this framework would make you compliant with any financial other regulation. But for me, it's the underlying question is that obviously we need to start somewhere, and if you're building something at the frontier, you need to be very clear to your builders, so the developers. We are selling to developers. What are some of the limitations? And obviously, as long as you're able to mitigate certain risks that the regulation is trying to mitigate, even if you're not necessarily compliant, because like in this case that you just gave, you're passporting some of the KYC processes that have been conducted by a regulated entity.
Indeed. And as you said, that does not make the new entity regulatorily compliant. It does pass an attestation, or what you could consider an attestation to a third party. If you were a non-regulated business, or if you were operating in a less stringent environment, having a KYC record from Uber or from Amazon or whatever else is probably enough to say this at least shows that there's one other entity that is having commercial transactions with this particular party. As a result, that lowers risk for me. Right?
Definitely.
Which is a start.
And when you think about like why do we have these regulations, they typically protect end consumers from certain intermediaries. So if you are, by the design of your solution or the properties of your technology, able to mitigate some of the risks that the regulation is there for protecting, it brings us as close as it could to compliance. Of course, it's not enough. So like I wouldn't advertise this as being regulatory compliant, but there is a very pragmatic angle to regulations. And as long as you are understanding why certain regulation exists and what kind of risks you are trying to prevent, and you're able to mitigate them, maybe in a different way, this is already close to where we should be building.
And that this is a door opener to what you potentially call virtual intermediaries. The kind of shared KYC utility concept's been around for a long time. It's something that we worked on in Deloitte when I was there years and years and years ago. And part of the challenge was liability risk. Part of the challenge was banks wanting to have their own differentiated KYC because they thought it was a competitive advantage. But if you got to a place with a regulator that said, we will trust any record from any bank, and that's enough for us, that's considered as compliant for you to be able to transact, you could streamline the user experience massively, because at least within that consortium of transacting parties, it doesn't have to be available on the open internet, right? This is not a solution for DeFi at large, but at least in a virtual consortium, it's progress. and you can extrapolate from there.
And there is one massive, juicy, sweet cherry on top of all of that. With web proofs or with email proofs, we are not outright sharing your data. Your data is staying where they were. We're just using the magic of cryptography to generate the claim that is strong enough and can be understood in a way that conveys the information value that is sitting within the data that you have. So we are not further propagating the problem of doing 15 times the same KYC with the same pictures of your IDs, whatever other methods are being used, and dispersing them to even more centralized servers, so that there is a bigger problem that sooner or later one of these servers will be compromised and your data is at risk. Here we are talking about the method where your data sits where it sits. Okay, it sits at the original centralized server that we are notarizing from, but we are not pushing it further. We are only like the currency that like the vessel that continues to travel further is the cryptographic claim, which is private by it's not understandable without the context. So that's a very strong property and something very unique that should be perceived at least interesting by all the regulators out there.
I got you. While we're on the topic, it's probably worth, you've spent most of your career working with data, fraud, sensitive data management. As you look into Web3 and Web2, I guess to a slightly wider extent, but what do you think are some of the issues around data or sensitive data that maybe those people listening in or the Web3 community doesn't necessarily understand or appreciate right now that you're looking to try and solve?
I would say the first and actually biggest issue is the fact that the user experience that is imposed by centralized platform really forces us as users. Obviously, we at the end of the day we sign TNCs, but we know how it works. Like very few people actually go into the details to understand like what they just agree. So it is fictitious in a way. Like I don't think it's a very sustainable setup to be collecting these consents and then effectively asking people to do what they don't want to, because it is a little bit of a tough situation. So we want to limit the direct data that is traveling in between servers and computers, because physically speaking, the fewer places a particular data point or data category is being stored at, that limits the exposure, and obviously that allows you to be in a simpler situation.
The good thing ideally is that place is not on chain and visible to everybody all of the time, but that's another one.
Yeah, exactly. And this is something a little bit further down the roadmap, but the beauty of some of the cryptographic techniques that we are working on allows you to create this kind of delta attestation. So some of the data points that you would like to generate proof from are becoming invalid quicker than others. The fact that you are citizen of a country X is quite stable in time. I guess most of us can agree with this, but the fact that you owned access to a particular platform, that can change over a matter of seconds or minutes. So in order to make this entire process of generating and verifying proofs more effective, we would like to introduce this ability to generate just proofs on the delta, so like on the effective change for some of the data categories, so that at the end of the day, we believe that some proofs could live as long as people, or maybe even longer than people, while some would need to be monitored and need to be redone very frequently, depending on the use case. Computation is a big topic within the space, and there has been, like, we didn't talk about this, but ZK itself has been undergoing tremendous progress in the last 18 to 24 months on both software and obviously hardware acceleration side. So everything is becoming more close to really most of the real use cases, like real life use cases. So being able to really go further than this and be able to have everything ZK, sorry for a little bit of the lingo, it's really the way to go. If you think about rollups, like if you think about Ethereum, and I'm not sure whether we have enough time to go there, there was this world split into optimistic rollups and ZK rollups. Like some strong voices were from the very beginning saying that sooner or later everything will be ZK rollup. Like it's not that this optimistic view, naive in a way view of then having this time to challenge and collecting fraud proofs and stuff like this. It sounds like a good intermediary step, but at the end of the day, if everything could be ZK, why wouldn't it? Like then
waiting 1 week for finality for anything in any world, I mean, is wild, right? You can imagine paying for dinner and you off you go, and then a week later is like, oh, actually, you know what? The person didn't have enough funds to be able to pay for that dinner. Oh, great! Now what do I do? This person's now off in Slovakia or in Australia or wherever they are next, and how does this help me? Right?
Exactly. So it's just a matter of making it economically sensible. And obviously, certain use cases are already fully there for a while. Some use cases are just entering, and probably we still need to wait a little bit to make all use cases relevant and then really cost effective. But it's just as much as now no one thinks about how the browser is working, and that there is this cryptography. Elliptic curves are being used in every HTTPS connection. Like we are able to stream to several people sitting in various places, and everything is encrypted. And we'll get there. Like it's just a matter of quite a few advancements, and this is a great state. And obviously, from a perspective of the individual, giving back the data to you and being able to challenge these GAFAs of this world and centralize people that effectively they went against the very principle of what internet protocol was supposed to be. Like it was all about, like if you look at the early protocols, like how internet was envisaged and effectively no one is monetizing the fact that email exists. Like obviously there are clients on email, there are certain services that can, but effectively the protocol by itself is self-governing. And then suddenly we were able to arrive at the state that there is this massive concentration and centralization of data power. And we do believe that the web proofs, as one of the three data sources that we were talking about today, will be able to level this playing field and go back to some of the principles that are really there at the beginning of the internet adventure.
So bringing back the original philosophy of the internet, or more of the open source, interoperable and free to use type of capabilities, and or at least making the internet more equitable, which is something I talk about from time to time on the other show, which we're not talking about here because I'm not shilling my other show on this show. Before we go, we've got a couple more minutes. I do want to talk about any advice that you may have. You mentioned sort of ZK. A lot of people mention the term magic when they speak with ZK as well, which I think also somewhat alienates the domain. Also, cryptography as a term is probably deeply scary to some people, whereas they don't realize, like you said, it's being used in everything that they typically engage with on the internet today already. It's just, it's accessible, it's being developed. It's not something you need to know yourself, but it is accessible and being utilized. What would be your advice as a parting gift to others looking to build with blockchain tech and particularly zero knowledge in terms of what we need to do next?
I would say that first of all, don't be afraid of acronyms. And
there are a lot.
It's true that zero knowledge can be extremely complex, but no one necessarily asks you to go and read all the white papers with underlying theoretical math that led to the implementation and a lot of this discourse. There are a lot of more and more, fortunately, materials that are really explaining or trying to explain how it works on big blocks, and I do believe this explain like M5 that we know from AI space. It's also, by the way, prepared like ZK Sync, one of the large protocols. They prepared Eli 5 ZK Sync version of like trying to explain
the one with the zoo.
Complex.
Is that the one?
Yes. Yes.
I saw that one. That was cute.
It was cute. It's probably not the easiest still, especially if you try with a 5-year-old. But what I'm trying to say is that, like, for instance, you mentioned no shilling. we are actually trying to popularize some of the things that are happening. We've been producing verifiable data reports. Like we released already web proofs. We are just about to release one about email proofs, and they are really written in a way to go step by step, explaining what is happening underneath, talking about various implementations, talking about security and trust assumptions. 20, maybe 25 pages of read, but really for someone who is curious, of course, like it will never be as simple as an online gossip story, because there are some things that you need to go through. But we do believe that it can be accessible as much as some of the other technologies have been made accessible to others. So feel free to go on a vlayer and download one of the reports. And there is a bunch of other resources out there. I would say that it's a mistake to ignore or to fall into this discussion, like whether it's going to be ZK or FHE. FHE stands for full homomorphic encryption, or anything else, or don't fall into the trap
MPC
of discussing.
or TEE, or again, pick your acronym, right? It's a spectrum.
It's a spectrum, but like what I really wanted to say is that don't go into the some of the negative discussions where but how is it relevant if we arrive at the quantum supremacy state? Like then we have much bigger problems because TLS doesn't work anymore. So like the world will stop overnight. So probably the ZK will not be the biggest of your problems. So I do believe it's time to really dive into this. As mentioned, 18-24 months, massive acceleration. There's like if you look at some of the maps of landscape of companies that are building within the ZK or ZK related space.
It's growing. It's wild.
So just it's worth taking a look. That's my last piece of advice.
100%. I go to the ZK summits and events, and they happen kind of every 4 or 5 months, and every time there's different projects presenting, there's different projects exhibiting. There's 10, 15 companies adding to the roadmap every time on acceleration, on verification, protocols, wallets, like with vlayer, kind of the Web 2 to Web 3 integrations. This is the point now where the infrastructure is solid, the tooling is getting there, and the adoption is coming soon. We're sure of it. Hubert, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for jumping in from the airport. Thank you for taking us through the concept of web proofs and vlayer labs. Guys, please go check out Hubert on LinkedIn. We've got all the details in the event itself. We'll put some comments in the show notes as well. Thank you, everybody, for your questions. We'll try and get to those in LinkedIn as well so we can go through them. And thank you very much for taking the time. Stay safe out there, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you, Anthony, for having me, and obviously for all the great questions. Hopefully the answers are somewhat compelling.
It's a great show. Thank you so much for being with us.